Okay, everyone, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. A really cool update for you guys from the brand Yema. All about them, they're of course a historic brand revival, and they've been producing French watchmaking since 1948. In terms of the type of watch, this is an everyday dress watch. Some key characteristics and design. When you're looking for something you can wear every day that can still be dressed up pretty nicely, of course you don't want something that's clean, classic, with a minimalist design that is also sensibly sized. This is their urban classic, and even the name tells you this. Definitely looking to be something quite versatile, right? Urban and quite classic. Inspired by their 1960s classic collections, the Urban Classic is Yema's interpretation of the ultimate French neo-vintage dress watch, equipped with their own automatic in-house caliber, the YEMA2000. Special thank you to Yema for lending these units in to share with you guys all. And in terms of the availability, I think these are actually available for you to purchase right now for $690 direct. Yes, $690, and they do have those in-house movements, which is really, really cool. Definitely also a little tip here. Yema didn't tell me about this. It's something I discovered on my own from just creeping on their website. Definitely check the site chat, because they'll often offer you a up to a 10% discount, if you pull the trigger. So just keep that in your back pocket if you do decide to buy one of these. So with all that said, let's actually zoom the camera out, get these three pieces in hand, and take a closer look. Okay guys, now one thing to get out of the way, of course I'm recording this in a dark room with just lighting off to either side. So when you look at these watches, they might not appear super legible, and that is because they're reflecting off of a dark space, oftentimes the dark camera lens that's right in front of it. So don't mistake that for the everyday legibility. That is just, of course, one of the drawbacks of recording in a controlled space versus me recording these outside. So just, again, just give that a little consideration before you say, hey, it's hard for me to read that. Well, it's because, again, these are reflecting off of, a dark background, whether it be the lens or as well as just the dark room. So if I have it at an angle, I'll try to get that there glinting for you guys in the right ways, guys. But of course, if you want to go to a fully lit picture of this, definitely check the links down in the description for those stock photos and everything like that. But you guys know I'm a big blue dial guy, so why don't we just start with this really cool blue dial. I don't know if I would go tone on tone with the blue on blue, but man, this is gorgeous. I'd probably want to opt for this one on the mesh, because I think this blue dial would just look fantastic with that. Now, in terms of the diameter here, very interesting, 37.5 millimeters, guys, and I have a pretty large wrist, at least larger than average, at about 7.5 inches. And I will say the 37.5 inch size here, I'm sorry, 37.5 millimeter size here has really won me over. I think proportionally it works, although the ultimate scale is a little bit smaller than I would like. The fact that they have quite an expansive dial, a very, very thin bezel, so that dial to bezel ratio is quite, it gives that dial more presence. Also, guys, look at this. The height is 13.2 millimeters, and you can see that beautiful piece of Hesselite crystal. Yes, guys, Hesselite crystal. This is not a sapphire, so you can buff this out. And if you knock it on something, the nice thing is it won't crack. It'll just scratch. So the nice thing is it might be easier to scratch, but harder to crack. So you won't have to replace it. You can just buff it right on out. Also, 44.4 millimeters lug to lug. So very wearable in terms of that lug to lug width, guys. Also, you can see the lugs have a beautiful turn down. Also, I really do like the job they did on this case profile. Very nice thin mid case with that nice stepped undercut here on the underside. And of course, then you have the bezel step, and then you have that crystal step. So it helps just keep that flow it's the opposite of a slab side. It's contoured, it's undercut. They made an effort to make this wear thinner on your wrist, and you will see that when I put it on my wrist, because all this is just going to sink into the wrist, and you're just going to see this beautifully thin mid case, and then that nice high dome crystal. So it actually does exude a bit of a thinner profile, which I really like. But look at the details here, guys. The satinization on the side, the nice high polished bevel there, nice transition back into polishing. So there's a lot to like here. Let me give this a quick little wipe off camera there, and you guys can take another look at those two other options. Wow, that icy blue dial, also very cool. And then of course classic black. I mean, it's a classic, but we'll keep it real vibrant and focus on the blue for now. Now we're rolling over to the back side. Really cool, nice stamped case back there, nicely etched, gives you all the information. Very handsomely done, and I think well finished. It has multiple finishes. You're seeing that nice matted finish there, and that kind of center emblem as the background, and then you have the brush satinization over the top, nicely 3D contoured there, and then of course that circular brushing for that screw-in case back, which is nice at 10 bar or 100 meters of water resistance. So very cool. Now, although you can't see the movement in here is Yema's French automatic caliber, the YEMA2000, which has a 42-hour power reserve and beats at 4 hertz. So 4 hertz beat rate, guys. So 28,800 vibrations per hour, which is really cool, and you don't always find that, especially when people kind of start getting into some of the more in-house, quote-unquote, types of movements. And the nice thing, this is actually adjusted to plus or minus 10 seconds per day, which, yeah, 20-second variance isn't the greatest, but I mean, it's nice that they even say, hey, we'll get it tuned in to plus or minus 10 seconds per day, because the movement itself has a plus or minus 25 seconds per day maximum rate. So they put in an effort, and they want you to know they put in an effort. They want you to feel good about this piece on your wrist. They're not just going to let you roll the dice and all that. So I think that's nice, especially because I don't think anybody's necessarily buying this, a watch like this, for its accuracy, right? So it's nice that they went in to try to add more of that value proposition ultimately, because I know some people are going to look at this and say specs wise, hey, we could have had sapphire. They just cut costs. I don't think they did, because this Hasselite's gorgeous, and if this was a sapphire, you would have to be very careful about the contour of the dome so that you don't get any milky rings or anything like that. And you can see here, this is just so clean, clear, crisp, and legible. And it flows with the look of this piece. It's not, it's meant to be a little bit dressier. It's meant to be taken care of a little bit more. So if you do have to scuff it and buff it, then I think you'll be okay. So with that said, let's actually take a close look at the black dial here. Really nice. Check that out. Ooh, very clean, classic, versatile. Definitely renders as a black dial, but then as you get it in like more lighting, brighter situations, you guys are going to notice, of course, it's going to have a bit of that anthracite gray is going to come out. Now, would I consider it a gray dial? No, it's still a black dial. It's still deep enough, dark enough for me to consider it a black dial that just ends up being lit pretty well when it comes to different angles and whatnot. Now, getting into this pale icy blue, this one might have won me over. I typically don't look for lighter blue colors because I find them to be a little bit less versatile, but man, something about this screams versatility, especially on this brown strap. Like, this could easily go with jeans, and they don't have to be light acid wash jeans either. Just this tone of blue is fantastic. Not quite a sky blue, but really nice pale blue dial there. So very handsome. But with that said, let's actually get these on the wrist and see how they wear. Okay, guys, now in terms of the watch case, this fits beautifully on my 7.5-inch wrist. And yeah, I do have a pretty large wrist. It's slightly larger than your average at 7.5 inches, but it is also quite round and tall. So it's not like it's really wide and flat and accommodating. So this really fits fantastic. I will say the strap, though, is way too short. So although as nice as this strap is, the nice thing is these are, of course, 20mm lugs, so very versatile from that perspective, but these are a little bit shorter. They do taper down to 18mm, which is great, but you guys can see I'm on the very last hole here. Beautifully signed hardware, but yeah, this just is wearing way too small. I should say too short. On the wrist, I think it wears fantastic. First, if we get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, it's going to artificially kind of skew your own, I would say your perception there. So because of the focal length, so what I'll do is keep my wrist nice and low, and then just tighten up the frame so you guys can still get a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio in terms of the way this may lay on your own wrist. So getting back to that shorter than average strap, the good news for you with really small wrists, you're gonna have less extra tongue hanging out of the back of your strap. For those of you with larger wrists, though, unfortunately larger than 7.5 inches, you're not gonna be able to use the OEM strap. These are going to be 75mm on the short end, and then 115mm on the long end, versus the more traditional standard ratio of about 80 and 120 lengths. So I know on paper, it's 10mm, but the 10mm placed on the strap and where the holes are and everything definitely make it a much bigger deal. You can see here this is going to be able to fit a really small wrist, but once you start using these, like if these holes were scooted down about 10mm and then you had a little bit more tail, about 10mm of tail, this would fit much better, at least for my larger wrist. The good news is for you with a smaller wrist, this is gonna be fantastic. Like you might just be, this could be a selling point for you, but unfortunately for those with larger wrists like myself, it can be a bit of a detractor. So with that said, let's actually get these I'll actually get this one off, and then we can set up for some loom shots. Well, there is no loom, but the low light transition and closing thoughts though. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. All right, so as you guys can see, there is no loom, but one thing I always like to work in is a bit of a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you can find stuff coming in out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. Maybe include a bit of harsh lighting, which typically could expose any types of production defects. But all you're going to see here, of course, are some really nice pre-production. Actually, these might actually be full-on production samples that they sent in. I'm going to be sad to box these up. Although with the strap length issue, I guess that'll make it easier on me. But yeah, no, these are really cool, guys. I dig these. Of course, I do know that the market is going back to smaller sizes as well as dressier watches. Of course, people's state of dress attire was typically more formal back in the day in terms of long sleeves, button-ups, and whatnot. Wearing a vest and a tie, that was a pretty standard affair back in the day. So of course the everyday watches that were worn more casually were also quite dressy. But now, of course, folks are wearing a little more sporty attire. So that's why sports watches have really taken off. But I think with that, now people with an appreciation, looking back to the past, you're seeing more and more really enjoy these more traditional sizes, and I think that works out great, and I'm happy that that is coming back to the market there. So very, very cool, guys. I'm a big fan of this lineup, and again, I'm thankful to Yema for sending these over, even though it's just on loan for me to showcase and share with you guys. Now, closing thoughts, guys. On the wrist, these wear surprisingly well for being on the smaller side, even on my 7.5-inch wrist. Again, apart from the strap being too short for me, but thanks to 20mm lug width, that should not be a lingering problem for anyone else, even if you do have a larger wrist. In terms of comparable models, actually no, model variants. These are the model variants, so you can see black, royal blue, or light blue. And yeah, that's the current availability. They might release other colors in the future, but I think these are a great, platform to start with. And then in comparable models, yes, dress watches and smaller watches in general are currently trending back. While these aren't the cheapest, they're also still well under $1,000, which is great, and still well-tuned in-house movements at that. So I think that's great. They're not the cheapest, but at the same time, it doesn't feel cheap at all. So I'm okay with that. So for the bottom line is, their combination of classic good looks and sizing really make the Urban classic easy contenders within the re-emerging dress watch market. Like, I think these are cool, especially that, French watchmaking, right? That just some of the dressiest dress watches came out of that region, and it's cool to see Yema representing again. So with that said, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Which one would be your color to pick? What strap pairing? You throw it on a suede strap, an alligator, what would it be? Matted, glossy, whatever. Let me know down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you're already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.